maybe the best thing to do is really to think about how do you ready your company for the next generation. Their tastes are different, and their philosophy is not Milton Friedman's philosophy. They've moved on. They don't think that companies are most valuable to society by maximizing at least short-term profits. So they've abandoned that, and you can decide to hang on to it if you wish, but if you're leaving behind connection with the next two generations in society, it's a dangerous game. So my usual opening speech, if I'm talking about sustainability in the United States, and I realize I'm in Canada right now, but it might be leaking over the border, is to say to the boards, listen, I'm going to talk about sustainability. If you don't care as customers or employees about urban educated Gen Z and millennials, you really don't need to listen to me. So that captures their attention, because I'm not trying to argue morality with them. I'm just trying to say the next generation of consumers and employees are into this stuff. So,
well, and you have to say that the regulatory agencies are imposing it on you anyhow. So your time has come, like it or not. You're going to have to disclose.
No, your time has come, but in part that's because that next generation of citizens also are interested in it. So, and the politicians see the writing on the wall. So I think even if the scoring isn't ideal,
yes,
now's the time to ask yourself, and the most effective way I found of doing it, if you want best practice, is really to think about company purpose and to try and flow that into a series of initiatives that informs how you behave and which markets you tackle and which products you formulate. And it tends to be very motivating in the company itself. So I would suggest start with purpose and from it develop a program of sustainability.
Yeah, interesting. I think I've been working with a European company that studies banks, financial institutions, and they've been way ahead of this because I think of the risk side of these components. And the conclusion they've drawn is that there's a migration. The board asks the management team, what are we doing about these issues? And if the management team says we're not sure, the board would say, well, why don't you hire somebody and get somebody on board and make it work? And that's sort of migration to step 2. And then the board says, are you ready to take this down into the operations of the company? So it affects our loan portfolio, it affects everything we do. And large organizations can't afford that. And it's a sort of a sequential stepping stone from board to top management, C-suite, migrating down into the operations, and then measuring what's coming out. Mid-size and small companies can't do that. They don't have the resources to migrate this kind of idea into the management team. So are we not leaving out a vast number of companies that are mid to small-sized enterprises when we're insisting that this be done across markets?
I'm not sure it's going to work like that, David. It might be costly. I mean, if I think about purpose-led initiatives, they tend to be very motivating for the staff.
Okay.
It gets people energized, and you discover that maximizing shareholder value is not getting your staff out of bed every morning. It's something else. They like serving customers, they like producing or designing great products. And when you put extra emphasis on that, whether you're a small or a large company, you do get a return. It's not as if it's not something you have to push all that hard, because it tends to get a good response. Now, that being said, on a more practical basis, if you're supplying a large company, they will be sending you a contract saying, please report on these things.
Yes, that's true.
And in future, we'll be selecting based on them. So you've got a choice.
I think that's right. I think it does go down the food chain that way for sure.
Yeah.
But it would be extraordinarily valuable, I think, for everybody, certainly on this side of the Atlantic, to get some best practices put out by some prestigious company like, say, McKinsey. What is the best practice on the reporting of these matters to your shareholders and your stakeholders? Because otherwise, a corporate secretary and the chairman of the board and the CEO are left, oh my God, where do we start? Which one do we read? Who do we follow? I really would love that.
You'll very soon, I mean, if you want my recommendation today, IFRS is pretty much a global standard. I think SEC is going to allow you as a foreign filer to
Okay.
file IFRS. If now you'll have to comply with SEC if you're an American company. So if you wanted a foresight of what's coming down the road, have a look at the SASB standards.
Okay.
They'll be the ones that you'll be required to report for listing purposes, essentially.
Yeah, that's very
and
useful.
if you want to see an expanded set, once the EU stuff come out, have a look at that as well.